Hello and welcome to this week's edition of SouthCoast End Zone. I'm Tim Weisberg.
I'm Laurie Loss.
And we are here to talk with you about all the action in South Coast High School football. And I'm feeling a little bit of the allergy thing, so if my voice gives out, Laurie will just have to do all the talking.
I usually do most of the talking anyway.
That's true. I just kind of nod in agreement and then throw out some weird, obscure jokes that Laurie just ignores and goes on.
Or I don't get.
Right. But that's fine.
Same
That's
thing,
the same thing. You still just ignore them and move on. But I was really impressed last week. I was here in the office working while everybody was out covering the games. I was really impressed with the interaction that we were getting on Twitter from everybody. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter at @SC_varsity. And I noticed that we're getting a lot of responses and retweets and people sending us scores and little factoids and stuff, but nobody's sending us pictures or videos or anything.
Yeah. Well, we got to start slow, but hopefully this week people will start sending us some photos and some clips, maybe some Vine.
Yeah, Vine.
Videos.
We should. Do we have a Vine account yet?
Not yet, but
we should make one.
Yeah, we're gonna make one.
Vine's a lot of fun. So we have a lot of games to talk about this week. We'll do that just as soon as Laurie takes us into the end zone with her first and goal.
Okay, first and goal. First down, New Bedford freshman quarterback Brendan Costa completed 12 of 17 passes for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns in a win over Franklin. Second down, Old Rochester's Nolan Bergeron threw a 51-yard touchdown pass and ran for another score on an 18-yard scamper as the Bulldogs improved to 3-0. Third down, Nick Richard not only threw a 9-yard touchdown pass, he also ran for a 69-yard score. Richard finished with 109 rushing yards as Voc Tech beat Fairhaven. Fourth down, the Apponequet Lakers posted 6 touchdowns in 6 drives for 35 unanswered points in the first half, with 2 touchdowns from Cam Costa and individual TDs from Troy Nanfelt, Weston Cohen, Matt Michael, and Peter Loranger. And taking us into the end zone for Player of the Week, Kevin Nunes had a hand in all 20 of New Bedford High's points, rushing for a touchdown, catching 2 touchdown passes, and also catching a 2-point conversion to help the Whalers capture their first win of the season.
All right. Well, congratulations to Kevin.
Yes.
And like I said, we have a lot of games to talk about this week. We have 7 games happening over both Friday and Saturday, so let's just jump right into it. Our first game is Friday night at 7 p.m., Apponequet at Dartmouth, and the Lakers are rolling. I mean, they're putting up an insane amount of points, and they actually let up their first points of the season last week, but it was the third-string defense that was out.
Yeah, so the starters haven't let up anything all season. And the Lakers are averaging 41 points per game this season, and a lot of times they're getting up big in that first half, and the starters are sitting most of the second half, which only bodes well for the reserve players who are getting playing time. Plus, your starters are getting all that rest time. But like I said during the first and goal, they scored on six straight possessions there. Tim said that was the first points that they'd given up, but it was against the reserves. And really just Cam Costa got him going with that. He had 2 touchdown runs. They also had Troy Nanfelt, who had a big touchdown run on a 42-yard scamper. Weston Cohen scored from 22 yards out. Matt Michael had a 3-yarder. Peter Loranger scored, and so did Ben Texera. Peter and Ben are, some of their backup players that got in there. So, I mean, Apponequet's just really dominating both sides of the ball. From what I read, I know you talked to Coach Lobb that it was over pretty early. I think they were up. What was it? Was it 35?
Yeah, 35-0 with 5 minutes to go in the first half.
Yeah, so I know the Lakers will face a much more difficult opponent this week in Dartmouth, and I've seen 2 of Dartmouth's games. Last week I saw them, travel to Attleboro, and I saw them 2 weeks ago against Stang. And last week against Attleboro, the Indians were in that game. They had 3 turnovers in the first half, and they still only trailed 13-6 at halftime. So at that point, you have to say, all right, we're in a position. Coach Rick White after the game said, at that point we were excited. We're on the road against a really good team. We had all those turnovers. We're still in it. And then I think Attleboro scored on its first 4 possessions in the second half. Dartmouth had a couple more turnovers, and they scored their touchdowns late in the game when it was already out of control. But they really struggled against Tim Walsh, Dartmouth's defense. He completed 18 of 26 passes for 249 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I think about 180 of those passing yards came in that second half. And I know Dartmouth was already playing without Nick Simonetti. He was on the sidelines. His arm was in a sling, which I'm assuming he's going to be back this week because Rick thought, it was just a sprain, his shoulder. But he's one of their top defensive backs. And also Jacob Rose, who had an interception earlier in the game and also caught a key pass on like a third down on their scoring drive in the first half. He got injured. He turned an ankle, so they were without him in the part of the second half. You're going up against a kid who can throw for 250 yards. That it's tough.
Well, and also, he said that they had 3 turnovers.
Well, they had 5 total.
Yeah.
And 3 in the first half, yeah.
And obviously, Attleboro is a team that can make you pay for those, but so will the Lakers. The Lakers are very opportunistic. They don't. If they get the ball like that, they don't. They punish you for it.
Yeah, and I know. I just want a little side note. That kid Walsh, the quarterback for Attleboro, I think he might be the best high school quarterback I've ever seen.
Really?
He was that impressive. He was, rolling out to the right. Creating time for himself, creating time for his receivers. It was impressive to watch him. It was hard to see because he was doing it against Dartmouth, one of our local teams, but at the same time.
And you're the Dartmouth beat writer.
Yeah, well, 2 weeks in a row, maybe 3 weeks in a row if I'm going this week. But it just was, it was kind of fun to watch him because he was so, he's got a lot of talent, and then a lot of his receivers, some of the catches they made, were spectacular, dragging their feet and just, diving out of bounds. This definitely is the game of the week. Ponequid at Dartmouth, 7 o'clock Friday. Ponequid's undefeated. Dartmouth's in that higher division. And I want to say the last time they played each other, it's been a while, was when Jordan Todman was at Dartmouth. Because I think I went to that game, and it was not, and it was out of Ponequid. I don't even think it was close. It was, that was when Dartmouth had the powers. And
well, this one might be a little bit closer than that, I think.
Yeah. But it'd be good for them to renew that rivalry. That's
a Ponequid at Dartmouth. That's a 7 p.m. Friday night game. Our next game is also a 7 p.m. Friday night game. Greater New Bedford Voc Tech at Old Rochester. And, Old Rochester also 3-0.
Yep.
Whereas Voc Tech has kind of been like a little bit of a trick-or-treat team so far.
Yeah, they're 2-1. They started the season off with the loss to Millis on the road, and then they've won 2 straight since then. And really last week, Voc Tech, they had a great game. They 5 different players scored for Voc Tech, including defensive end Joe Walsh. He scooped up a Fairhaven fumble, and he returned it 35 yards for the game's first touchdown.
So life's been good for him.
Yeah, he was excited for that.
Doesn't get it.
What?
That's a Joe Walsh song.
Oh, Joe Walsh. No, I definitely don't get it.
Okay.
Sean Aldridge had 101 yards on 7 carries. Nick Richards, like I said earlier, had 109 rushing yards on 8 carries. And he had that 69-yard touchdown run. He also hooked up with McCabe Martins for the other score. So they got it done on the ground, in the air. They had another strong defensive effort. They only gave up 1 touchdown to Fairhaven, and that was, I think, at the final minute. I think it was like 32 seconds left. They gave up that touchdown. And Voc Tech is going to have a tough challenge this week against Old Rochester, which the Bulldogs jumped out to a 28-0 lead last week against Bourne. They ended up cruising 35-0. They had 260 rushing yards in that game. Colin Napton had a big game. Darian Dumond, Raekwon Phillips, and Richie Phillips, they each contributed to the victory. Napton had the most carries. He had 10 for 79 yards and had a touchdown in that game. Raekwon Phillips, he had 5 carries, and 46 of those came on a touchdown run. And Dumond added a touchdown run, as well as Nolan Bergeron. So they all kind of contribute. I was sitting here talking to Andrew Tornetta, who was at the game just a few minutes ago, and I said to him, who was the star of the game? And he said, well, there wasn't a star of the game. It's kind of everybody, everyone's contributing, and it's...
Right, I think the star of the game for that would be the Bulldogs' offensive coordinator.
Yeah, true.
Because they're finding a way to make use of all the talent that they have, and, they've got so many great backs that can score on you, and then, one of them can't score? Well, that's all right, because we've got Nolan Bergeron, he can throw the ball.
And not to really jump too far ahead, but it'll be exciting on Thanksgiving, if everyone stays injury-free for Ponequid and for Old Rochester when they do clash, after all the playoff craziness is over with, and, they meet for their rivalry, because they both have, these kind of deep backfields and talent, and it'll be exciting to see. I know we have to wait all the way till Thanksgiving for that matchup, but it'll be one that I have circled on the calendar.
And not just because it's the end of the season.
Yes, not because it's Thanksgiving.
All right, so that is Greater New Bedford Voc-Tech at Old Rochester, 7 p.m. on Friday. Another 7 p.m. Friday night game is Durfee at Bishop Stang, and Bishop Stang they've looked good at times. Yeah. They've struggled at times, but they're going up against Durfee, so
yeah.
I mean, you almost want to say it's a W the way that the Hilltoppers have been the last few years.
Well, it's interesting because Stang opened the season, they had that big win over Wareham, and then they played Dartmouth and just got dominated by the Indians, and then they've had a week off. So I think that week off kind of came just at the right time, for them to kind of regroup and kind of, hopefully get that bad taste out of their mouth from the loss to the Indians. And in that loss, I mean, they only had 117 yards, total offense, and I think 28 or 29 of those came on like the last play of the game when the game's pretty much over. And they also turned over the ball 3 times. You're not going to do much against a Dartmouth team when you're turning over the ball that much in the game. And the Hilltoppers, they've struggled. They're winless on the season. They're coming off a 42-21 loss to Taunton, and in that game they fell behind 20-0 against the Tigers. And really, their first 5 offensive, their 5 first possessions, they managed just 3 first downs total, and they never got on the Taunton side of the field, Taunton territory. But Brian DeMello, he did get on the scoreboard for Durfee. He broke free for a 51-yard touchdown run, and Travellis Oliver hit Mike Correa for a 17-yard touchdown. And DeMello, he actually, even though he just scored the 1 touchdown, he led Durfee's attack, rushing the ball 24 times for 207 yards. So, he was able to kind of rack up some yards there. I'm not sure if that was against, Taunton's A team or if it was against, their second players or you know what I mean. But that's going to be the key for Bishop Stang is keeping tabs on him.
I can't, and I may be wrong on this, but I think Durfee's over like the last couple of years. I don't know if they've won a game in a while. I know I saw them last year toward the end of the season against Dartmouth, and they just got manhandled by Bo Parland, who was I think making his first start at the time.
Yeah, I can't remember. I know I covered them last year against New Bedford on Thanksgiving, and I want to say they had at least 1 win, maybe 2. I can't remember the record though. My memory doesn't go that far back.
Hopefully, the Spartans can make sure that they don't get in the win column.
Yep, and I mean, and to see, I mean, Taunton, is a very good team. Mm-hmm. I mean, we saw that last week or 2 weeks ago against New Bedford, how they beat New Bedford. So
they jumped out. I believe it was 24-0. They jumped out.
Yeah, it was a big lead. So I mean, Stang, should be able to win this game. But, they got to make sure that they don't have as many turnovers as they did a few weeks ago and also, keep DeMello in check.
So that is Durfee at Spartan Village, 7 p.m. on Friday. Also 7 p.m. on Friday, Wareham at Dighton Rehoboth. And normally this would be a big game, but I'm worried about my Vikings here because they scored last week at least. They put up their first offensive points of the season, so there's that.
Yeah, well, last year, they played later in the season, but I remember last season, Buddy Thomas and myself, we went to the game. I was at Wareham last year, and, I mean, it was, for all intents and purposes, it was like the SouthCoast Conference title was being decided that night, and I think Wareham was without, 1 or 2 of their players, and they just really never got out of the gates. DR just controlled the whole tempo. I mean, and that, not to say that put a sour kind of feeling on the season, but it really did. DR didn't clinch the title that day, but they pretty much did. This week, there's really not a heck of a lot on the line in this game. I mean, there's, it's important to play. I don't want to say that this game doesn't mean anything, but
I mean, Wareham can kind of play the role of a spoiler somewhat, making sure that if you tack another loss onto the Falcons, they can pretty much say goodbye to their conference hopes and maybe even their playoff hopes.
Yeah, because DR did lose to Apponequet 2 weeks ago. They bounced back this past week with a non-league win over Somerset Berkeley, 23-16. And in that game, they came back and they ended up rallying with the go-ahead touchdown from Kyle Rose. He had a rushing touchdown late in the game to win that game. Nathan Kowalski, he's the quarterback. He threw a touchdown for the Falcons, and Norman Manchester had the other rushing TD. And those are the same names, if you read anything about DR, that you hear week in and week out. And that'll be the key, is keeping those guys in check for Wareham. And really for the Vikings last week in their loss to Seekonk, it was a tale of 2 halves. The first half, Wareham had 0 yards of total offense and 3 turnovers. Second half, the Vikings didn't turn over the ball at all, and they finished with 156 yards of offense. They also scored 3 touchdowns in that game, and their first offensive touchdown came on a Cy Barati. Is that his name? Barito. He hooked up with Nick Elser on a 19-yard scoring toss. So that's who got it going. Owen Braley had the rushing 2-point conversion. He also had a touchdown later in the game. And then they had a big special teams play when they blocked a 33-yard field goal attempt, and Jordan Andrews picked up the ball and returned it 75 yards for a touchdown. So they're starting to make plays,
And that's one thing about Wareham is it seems like I think that's the second special teams touchdown they've got this year.
Yep, because the first game they had is 1.
I mean, if the offense is still developing, at least the other facets of the game can kind of bail them out a little bit. And maybe we see more of what we saw in the second half last week going into this game.
Yeah, and I know when I was at the Dartmouth-Attleboro game, we were getting a lot of people interested in the Wareham game. So, make sure if you're at the games, send us messages, tweet, because I think we were a little behind because I was getting text messages from the reporter that was there, and other people, when I was putting the text messages on, on Twitter, when I was tweeting them, people were saying, no, they've scored, Wareham's already scored, and
I was getting the updates off my Facebook friends and kind of putting it up. That's why I kept saying, reports from Wareham, because although I trust them, they're not sports writers.
Yeah.
So I'm just going by what they say. But, we did the best we could. And to that one kid out there who keeps tweeting again and again, #FireNull, cut it out.
That's not very nice.
Right. Not going to happen. Doesn't need to happen.
No. Nope.
They're taking with the talent that they have, and they're trying a new system to see if they can make it work, and they're just not getting the players like they used to get, which I think is a story that we're working on here.
Yeah, and also, I mean, even not to go too much into this, but they graduated, almost their entire.
Right. Owen Braley's the only returner, and he's playing a different position than he did.
Yeah, so it's a whole new group of kids,
right.
and some schools never really, they kind of just reload, but it seems like in Wareham they have to rebuild.
Every once in a while they have to start from scratch and then build for a couple of years. So.
But I would be surprised in a couple of years if they're not competing for the title again.
Absolutely. So that is Wareham at Dighton Rehoboth, 7 p.m. on Friday night. Also at 7 p.m. on Friday night, Fairhaven at Seekonk. And hopefully this is the week where the Blue Devils can get something going.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, last week against Voc Tech, Fairhaven did get its first points of the season, but it came in the final minute of the game when quarterback Ian Furtado, he hooked up with Kevin Albino on a 62-yard scoring strike, and Ian Furtado hit his brother Kevin Furtado with a 2-point conversion. But in that game, fumbles plagued the Blue Devils, and really Voc Tech capitalized on their mistakes, and now that they're 0-2 coming into this game. And really, Seaconk's a team, I don't really have a good feeling for them. They'll have a big win, and then, they started the season off with a big win over Case, and then 2 weeks ago they lost to Voc Tech pretty badly.
That was a win over Case. Case has struggled. So.
Well, and then even last week against Wareham, they came out and they dominated, 48-20, and that game, I can't remember what it was at halftime, but it wasn't even close. Actually right here, 34-0, they jumped out, at halftime, the Warriors, and their quarterback, Nick Lancelletti, he threw 3 touchdown passes, and Brendan Smith also had 2 touchdown passes for Seekonk, as 6 of their 7 TDs came through the air. So they definitely got the job done through the air, and that's going to be a key for Fairhaven, a young team, young defense trying to go against a passing attack, which is different than what, they saw this past week with Voc Tech, which, was a mostly running team. And
right.
even week 1 against Apponequet. Apponequet's mostly a running team. They don't
they're first and foremost a running team. If they can run, they will run.
Yeah.
They'll throw if they need to, but so far they haven't really needed to. They've been able to run all over everybody.
Yeah, so this week we'll really get to see, how Fairhaven's defense stands up against, a passing game, and see how, see if they're able to kind of get things to going, because they're in the same situation as Wareham. They graduate a lot of their kids. Mm-hmm. They have talent, but it's pretty young, and it's going to take some time to develop.
So that is Fairhaven at Seekonk, 7 p.m. on Friday, and I noticed that all the Friday night games are 7 p.m. Nothing moved to 4 o'clock.
No, and we actually had that Voc Tech Old Rochester game was originally for Saturday at 1, but we got, some emails and tweets from Old Rochester saying, hey, there's no mosquitoes out here. We're moving it to Friday night at 7. So.
I think that those couple of 35-degree nights we had last week might have killed them off a bit.
Hopefully.
So now we'll move to the Saturday games, and 1 o'clock on Saturday, New Bedford at Bridgewater Raynham, and we're starting to see from the Whalers. I mean, this could be an exciting season for them, especially offensively. Yep. They've got some good things happening.
Yeah, I think that the opening that season with that big loss to Taunton, and just the way they kind of got in that big hole and they couldn't come back, and they gave up a lot of yards to the Tigers, and just at that point we're like, I think a lot of us were shaking our heads like, what's going on? This isn't usually, at least. Even if New Bedford loses, they're usually in the game, and that game.
They don't give up 24 points to start the game.
Yeah. So this past week, it was a lot better showing by the Whalers. They used, 2 quarterbacks. As I said earlier, Brendan Costa, the freshman, he did most of the passing. He threw the ball 12 times for 117 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then they moved. They put Chandler DeBras in sometimes at QB, and he actually had 57 rushing yards on 10 carries. So, Coach Dennis Golden really just said that he likes the combination of having the two-headed monster leading the attack. And, when you have Kevin Noon, somebody who can be on the receiving end and take advantage, it's nice to have kind of more threats on offense. And Noon's had a big game. He, ran for a touchdown. He, caught 2 touchdown passes, had the 2-point conversion. And, he finished with 12 carries for 44 yards and 5 catches for 59 yards. So a lot of the offense went through him. This week, it's going to be a tough challenge. Bridgewater Raynham is a very tough team. I don't know where they are right now in all the polls statewide. I think they were up to number 1 last week because they had some big wins. They had knocked off 2 of the top teams in the state back-to-back weeks, beating St. John's Prep 20-14, and then beating Duxbury 13-10. It seemed like they were kind of the Dragon Slayers, knocking off the top teams back-to-back. And then
was that a pun?
A pun, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Duxbury Dragons?
Yes.
Good job.
Yeah.
I
didn't know you were going to stop me. I thought you were just going to go.
No. I just wanted to recognize that for the audience that might not be familiar.
Yes.
That was very well
Duxbury
done.
Dragons, yes. And this past week, Bridgewater Raynham really just struggled against the Zavarian brothers. This is a team that, every year Zavarian's really, really good.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it was a letdown for Bridgewater Raynham or what, but I wasn't at the game, but I read up on it, and it just sounded like everything could have gone wrong. They had they had 2 punts blocked. Let me see. Yeah, they had 2 punts blocked in back-to-back series in the third quarter. One of them was returned for a touchdown. The other one was returned to the 1-yard line. So that's pretty much another score. They were down 14-0 after the first quarter, and their rushing attack, which is usually really good, got shut down. Brandon Gallagher, their top running back, he had 34 yards on 15 carries, and as a team, they just had 80 rushing yards total. So this is a Bridgewater Raynham team. I know Coach Dan Buren. I know him really well from my time at the Taunton Gazette, and he's going to have these guys hungry to come out here and, or actually not come out here, but, come out at Bridgewater Raynham and just give a strong effort against New Bedford. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond coming off that tough loss and how New Bedford responds, with the first win of the season. And the offense looks like it's finally clicking, and the defense only gave up 2 touchdowns. So this should be, if you don't have anything to do on Saturday, go up to Bridgewater Raynham, make the drive, and watch this game.
Eventually,
it should be a good one.
Eventually, you'll be able to take SouthCoast Rail.
Yeah, eventually. We won't wait for that, though.
So that is New Bedford at Bridgewater Raynham, 1 p.m. on Saturday. And our final game is another 1 o'clock on Saturday tilt, West Bridgewater at Old Colony. And the Cougars are actually looking pretty good this year. And Jake Pringle is turning out to be the real deal.
Yeah, well, the Old Colony had a big win 2 weeks ago, week 2 of the season, and they're coming off a bye now. But in that big win over Cape Cod Tech, Jake Pringle, he got it done through the air. They had 476 total yards, including 230 on the ground. Ryan Ferries had a big game, on the ground. They scored the first 22 points of the game, and Ferries recorded 124 of his team's 230 yards. He took his first handoff 36 yards for a touchdown, and Pringle, got the job done through the air. So I think a lot of people looking into the season might have just said it's all about Pringle, which I think I was one of those people that said, it's all about him. But I think Ryan Ferris is showing people that they can have that balanced attack, which that's what they're going to need when they face teams like West Bridgewater, teams that traditionally over the years, they haven't had a shot at beating, And West Bridgewater is coming into this game. They just had a loss to Bishop Conley last week, 34-19. They're 1-1 on the season. And Jonathan Gentile, he's thrown 2 touchdown passes, one this past week and one week 1. And he's probably their focal point on offense. He's their quarterback. And Jordan Ames, he also had a rushing touchdown against Bishop Conley. Those are the 2 names you're going to hear a lot of. But I mean, sometimes the bye week is a good thing for a team. Old Colony, they probably were hoping it wasn't right after they, put almost 50 points on the board.
Right.
But at the same time, if they were focused in on West Bridgewater, it just gives them one more week to prepare. So this should be a good matchup, and they'll definitely, Old Colony will definitely be in this game. I know in years past, I think, like last year it was 34-14 West Bridgewater won. So it'll be a lot closer than that.
All right, so that does it for all of our games. We'll go over the slate one last time. Friday's games: Fairhaven at Seekonk, Durfee at Bishop Stang, Wareham at Dighton Rehoboth, Greater New Bedford Vogue at Old Rochester, and Apponequet at Dartmouth. Those are all 7 p.m. games. And then on Saturday, both games are at 1 p.m. We have West Bridgewater at Old Colony and New Bedford at Bridgewater Raynham. So we just want to remind everybody, when you are out at these games, you can tweet us at SC_varsity. Send us your pics and photos. Send us your videos. And your thoughts on whatever else is happening, and any kind, we like those little tidbits of information that we might not know about that you think we should be aware of. And you can also like us on Facebook, SouthCoastVarsity.com on Facebook. It's important to remember that .com part on Facebook. So, anything else to add?
No, I just wanted to mention one other thing is this past week, I know at the Old Rochester game, Andrew Tornado was tweeting, and I guess he had one of the touchdown scores as the wrong player. So somebody tweeted and said, hey,
it was Raekwon, not Richie Phillips.
Yeah, and we want you to do that. If we mess up, let us know, because we might have looked down and looked up and not saw the right number or something. But we will verify it, which Andrew did verify. So, but thanks for the heads up, and anything that you guys want to tweet to us, as long as you keep it clean. For the most part, we'll retweet things and messages and
journalism. We guarantee you that what goes out in the paper will be accurate, but what we put out on the tweets, we don't really.
It's all live. Sometimes we have to confirm things afterwards.
Yeah,
so.
we all figured it out in the end. Well, I guess that does it for this week's show.
Yeah.
Since you didn't have any hot chocolate yet.
I didn't have hot chocolate, but because I was in Attleboro and I couldn't drive back here and file my story here, I did go and have a coffee at Dunkin' while I wrote my story, and the coffee was so-so. So the coffee in Attleboro.
By the way, this week's South Coast End Zone not brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts, thankfully. All right, so that does it for this week. Until next week, we will see you under the lights.
And in the end zone.